there, everybody. How are you today? Um, Today is part three of our series on preparing our dogs for re-entry. Part one was all about how do we get our dogs used to seeing people, and especially us, wearing masks and other things that they haven't seen for a while. Part two, we talked a little bit about re-socializing our dogs that have been cooped up in our own house and yard for a while. Today, part three, and I don't know if this will be the last one, so maybe there will be more. Today is the separation edition. So, as much of our country and the world starts to prepare to reopen, or maybe is starting to reopen, I'd like to talk a little bit about how we can prepare our dogs ahead of time for separation that is inevitably going to come as we resume some more of our lives outside the home. I'm Kirsten Tolley. I'm the owner of Free State Canine in Maryland, and welcome. So, um, early on in this crisis, I shared this post on my Facebook page, and everybody laughed. But this was an adjustment for a lot of our dogs to um, to get used to having us around all the time. And I imagine that in the time since then, um, having everybody home all the time might have caused some hiccups initially. I think that everybody has probably worked through most of those issues by now, and we've settled into a new routine or a new normal for us and for our dogs. And this can come with its own set of problems. Hmm, sorry. Hang on for 1 second. The comments don't always show up on my screen here, so I've got it going on my phone as well. But either there's a huge delay or it's not showing up. Okay, there we go. Um, so most dogs that I know are generally getting a lot more attention during the daytime throughout the day than they may have before. They're probably getting more walks. They're probably getting more freedom in the home because if somebody's home to keep an eye on them, if they were crated beforehand when you're not home, now they're not crated very much. And there's more grooming interaction. We have more time to spend with them intentionally and unintentionally. And this is all great. It's a good thing. Maybe you've even taken advantage of some time home to work on some training things with your dog. Thumbs up. I am all for all of that. The thing is, um, the thing is, we might have inadvertently created a codependency. And again, not always an issue, but if you need to go back to a life where you're not able to give your dog all of the things that they're getting right now, we can prevent some stress by planning ahead. So, some of the signs that you might have this codependency going on. First of all, I know that I go to my dogs when I'm feeling stressed out myself, and it's therapeutic to be able to be with them and to have that touch and that contact and affection. So for me, it's going to be hard when I need to leave my dogs again. From our dog's point of view, if you have got this relationship now with them where they're able to follow you around from room to room, and they do that. They may even follow you from one part of the room to another part of the room. If you sit in one chair and get up and move, they'll move right there with you. If they seem like they need to be touching you all the time, if they nudge you when you log into your Zoom calls or when you get onto your computer, then you know that you've created a bond that is super tight, but maybe not the healthiest thing in the whole world, especially for when we need to create some of that separation again. So um, I started thinking about this because every single fall after the summer comes to a close and students start going back to school, older kids go to college, adults in the home start going back to a more normal or heavier work schedule. About 2 or 3 weeks in, I start getting those calls about dogs that are having behavior issues. And I think we're going to see a lot of the same thing as we start to go back now. Um, a lot of dogs struggle with changes in routine. And again, you may have seen that at the beginning end of all of this when everybody was there and all the time and they didn't get their normal, 5 or 6 hour nap every day. Um, so dogs can struggle with a change in routine, especially if that change in routine leaves them with less of all of the stuff that they've enjoyed up until now. So if we think ahead, they're going to have less time to just be with us. You're going to have less time to spend all of this time with them. Um, and we may have absences that are a little bit longer than, a trip to the grocery store. So that can cause dogs to become bored. It can cause them to become stressed. It can cause them to become anxious. And then those things show up as a wide range of behavior issues and sometimes even health issues. So, since we know that this transition is coming, let's be proactive. Let's help our dogs ahead of time so that it's not such an abrupt and painful transition for them. And we can help them avoid more stress later. Yay! That's always good, right? Especially since it's going to happen. So, sticking our heads in the sand and saying we're just going to keep this dependent relationship going until the very last minute and then tear off the band-aid, that doesn't work for a lot of dogs, and you'll actually wind up causing them more distress. So, first thing, I would encourage you to take a dependency inventory. Notice in the next couple of days, just notice how many times and in what situations is your dog able to control and or create interaction from you. How often do they do that? And again, it's don't push them away, don't do any, just take an inventory. See realistically how much is this really happening? And a lot of times we'll do without even noticing it. The dog comes up and, nudges us and we say, "Oh, hey," because you can't not, right? And then they're so cute. So they're being rewarded for that every single time. But just take an inventory. How often does your dog move to be right next to you or on your foot? How often does your dog follow you from one room to another? How often is that dog initiating contact and interaction with you? Once we have that, we have an idea of how much of an issue we might have or how big of a gap there is between where we are right now and where we're going to need to be. So there are three skills that I would encourage you to start now, three activities that are pretty simple, but will help you a lot, make a big impact for you and your dog down the road when you have to start being out of the home more. The first one is if your dog will be crated while you're gone, and I encourage that, especially for young dogs, dogs that are newer to your home. We're not going to get into that. But if your dog had been crated before comfortably and has not been crated very much recently, because as I said, we're home all the time. Somebody's always there to make sure that they're not getting into trouble and they're probably not as bored anyway. So if your dog will be crated again, I'd encourage you to start scheduling some crate breaks, even while you're home during the day. And those breaks should be long enough that the dog stops thinking about getting out. So for your dog that was very comfortable being crated before all of the shutdown happened, that might just take an hour. It might take two, but up to four is okay. If you haven't been doing it for a while, let's set our dogs up to relax and do what we want them to do in there. Relax and take a nap. So a couple things before you put the dog in the crate. It's a good idea to either give them a nice long relaxing walk ahead of time, or you can give them some sort of a mental workout, tire them out mentally by doing some training, some impulse control, something, um, brain exercise that will make them just as tired, if not more tired, than a big long walk. But either one of those things are helpful. So it's a good idea to do your crate thing after mental or physical exercise. The other thing that you can do is give them a chew or a Kong or some sort of frozen something to work on. Um, and that will promote relaxation as well. And then just leave them in there. Now, you may get a little bit of whining in the beginning, but if you don't go back and let them out and allow them to understand that they can still control you by making a little noise, um, it should be pretty quick to get back into that routine. So, how much? I would say probably once a day. If your dog is having a lot of problems with it, do it more often because they need to get comfortable with that idea. If your dog was not crated before everything shut down and you have problems with this, unfortunately, that's beyond the scope of this particular talk. but it's something I certainly would be happy to help you out with. So reach out, freestatecanine.com, or you can leave a comment below and get in touch, send me a message. Certainly be able to help you out with that. So activity number 2 that will help to make a big impact towards any incipient separation anxiety that might be happening here is to teach your dog that they can move away from you and still be okay. So how do I do that? I teach a dog to go to a cot, a bed, a place um, from me to the cot and then stay there. Again, I'm not going to go through all of the details of this, but if you've trained with me, or there's, I don't know how many odd videos available on YouTube, again, you can call me if you need help, but have them leave you to go to a cot and then stay there. That requires the dog to have his own agency and to move away from you. And moving away from you and staying put and being okay and going through that process over and over and over again helps to build confidence and stability. And then the third thing that I told you these are simple, right? The third thing that you're going to start doing that will help and have a big impact on this whole separation thing down the road is teaching your dog that you can leave them for a minute and the world doesn't end. So, same thing. Teach them, take them to a cot, put them on a cot, and make them stay there. You can move around the room. If your dog is very much glued to you, I wouldn't put them on a cot and then leave for an hour. I would leave the room for 2 seconds and come right back. Go to the other side of the room and come right back. If you and your family are watching television at night, put a cot on the opposite side of the room and have the dog stay there. Leave your room, if this is all going well, leave the room for a couple of minutes and then come back. Let's see. Oh, sorry. And start to build up some time with that. So one thing to be careful that you can use a back tie or a tether as well, and that'll kind of help with this process so that you don't have to be in there watching every single second. Do not leave your dog tethered and unattended for long periods of time, but during this process of training, it can be helpful because it can prevent what I call failure by attrition, which is basically where we have our dog do a downstay and then we forget about them. We forget to go back and get them. And then eventually they figure you've lost focus, you've lost attention, and they go ahead and get up and leave. It's really important that if you put your dog in a stay on a cot or someplace, that you go back and finish that stay intentionally and don't just let it drift away. So again, you'll be able to work up to, provided that things were going normally before the shutdown and you didn't have major separation issues before the shutdown, you should be able fairly quickly, within a week, 2 at the most, to get back to being able to leave the room and your dog not completely wigging out. But practicing doing that movement of in and out, practicing having the dog move away from you, practicing spending time in the crate and just relaxing without having to go through this whole process of gearing up and winding up. The more often you go through that, the easier time your dog will have when you get back to a work routine. So hopefully that'll help. If you do need help, or you could feel free to message me here. I'm on Free State Canine on Instagram, YouTube, here on Facebook. And if you follow, subscribe, like all of those things, you'll definitely get a notice the next time we do part 4, if there is a part 4. So happy to take requests or suggestions for part 4. Okay, I'm not seeing anything. If you're watching on the replay and you do have a question, feel free to drop it below. I will come back and check on those. And I hope you all have a fantastic weekend.